people grow up in these chaotic situations, and I would describe both of us in that kind of situation in our childhoods. So when you get out in the real world, what do you do to feel normal? You create chaotic situations. And so I think a lot of people's suffering is self-induced because they think they need that to be normal. And they don't know what happy is supposed to feel like. They don't know what normal is. Their normal has shifted. Whereas society would say, "Ooh, this is bad." No, this is your normal, and that's never going to happen because that's not going to happen to me. It's kind of what happened to you when you moved into the house you're in now. You had this happiness come over you. I've gotten the fulfillment of my life. I got to get out of that crazy town where all my abuse happened and all the whispers and everything happened. And here I am. And your first reaction was not happiness. You were.
Yeah, I was suffering, and I 100%, that was me. That was my thoughts, my perceptions, and what had happened. And yes, there's some complicated trauma tied in there, but I got the thing like that I had been working for so long, and it felt so uncomfortable. It felt, as weird as it is, man, trauma brain can mess you up. It felt like suffering to feel happy.
Yes.
And so what you're saying is so true, that because of what we go through, our idea of normal begins to shift. It's in that shifting when the happiness, the good emotion, and we'll get into that in a second because I will light that up, but the good emotion of happiness feels uncomfortable. It feels uncomfortable to feel this because you've never felt it before. And so even though by society standards, happiness is great, it's still uncomfortable for those of us who've not experienced it a whole lot.
I have to ask the question, how many people are walking around with that mentality that suffering is the normal? And that's why we tolerate ugliness in our society, a lack of compassion in our society, racism in our society, those kinds of things. Like, the reason those things persist is there's suffering and people are living in the midst of that suffering, thinking that's the normal, not knowing there's a better way out, not necessarily happiness, but not that.
Right. Wow. You just blew my mind. Like that's so true, that the amount of suffering like in the world, we just accept it as this is normal. And I just posted a reel about it.
Oh, that'll do it. You don't have to worry about me. You do not have to worry about me.
I was trying to be funny, but it goes along with this of like the people who say this is just how I am, or people that say this is just how the world is, or this is just normal. But we don't have to accept that, and that's where the lie comes in, and we have to tell ourselves, hey, we are pushing this suffering ourselves. We are causing the pain, and we have to get out of that. We have to shift out of that. But the problem is we don't want to admit that it's our responsibility, that we've played a part in the years of suffering. Like, listen, go ahead.
Because it's so much easier to make somebody else a scapegoat. You could easily make that MFer stepdad your scapegoat. I could easily make my dad my scapegoat because they're the ones that kind of were instrumental. There were other people, but those were the two players in our respective stories that played a huge role. It would be so easy. Oh, well, I'm not where I want to be in my life today because, and then point the finger. And one of your journal entries, I don't want to ruin it for people, but you've got a great journal entry, and you can't control what happened to you, but you sure the hell have control over what happens to you henceforth. And
right.
Yeah,
it's powerful. It's such a powerful thing when and listen, guys, like when you actually take responsibility in your own suffering and realize, oh shit, I did this to myself. It sucks. Sit with that pain for a second. Feel that. You know how I'm going to say, feel your feels about it. But there's such power in that. I take responsibility and I'm going to make this better. And so that's where I was with what happened to me. And I talk about this in the book too, that what happened to me was not my fault. It was 100% on him. I do blame him, for what he did to me. However, the responsibility of the emotions and the thoughts and the feelings and where I go forward, that's on me. And if anything, I stopped it, because the more I push the suffering in my life that's here, the more I push it, the more he won. And so I was like, no, F you. If anything that you did to me, I'm moving forward and I'm going to take my power back. And so that's where the suffering is guys, stop playing into the suffering that you're causing yourself. Take it back and move forward. I'm vibed up today.
And so am I. It could be the ketones from the fasting, but like I'm really revved up on this topic too, because I think a lot of people live in the suffering.
Yeah.
Because they want people to feel bad for what they've been through. Like it was so easy for me. And look, we do share our stories, but not to say, oh, pity me, woe is me, I'm suffering. No, it's about, hey, I see you. You got some trauma too. Look at how I overcame a lot of things, still working on a lot of things. And they see somebody like you and I who we don't allow the suffering. Sometimes we do, because we have those moments where you and I are talking and I'm like, okay, she needs me, or okay, I need her, and we talk it out. And you've got your wonderful husband that you talk to about a lot of things as well, that helps when you're dealing with the suffering. But a lot of people, they stay kind of in that suffering mode constantly. Like they want people to pity them. They want people to feel sorry for them, to lavish all these words on them. They're feeding off of, they're almost becoming codependent on other people emotionally in order to survive in the world, when suffering is the default.
What I think it is people confuse that, oh, poor, that reaction that they get, with validation for what they're feeling. But that's not what it is. Validation is not, oh my gosh, that's so terrible, I'm so sorry, and I hate that. God, I hate telling somebody what I'm going through and they're just like, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I expect them to say, but it's just like, ugh.
You've done that to me.
There are times when like there's nothing to say,
yeah.
And I don't mind being like, I don't know how to react to that. That's tough.
Right. Well,
yeah.
Look, I'm not saying that I hated when you said I'm sorry. No, it shows somebody care, and I've done the same thing to you. That
I guess it's not like, I'm sorry you're going through that, like, having some oomph behind it, when they're just like, oh, I'm so sorry. Ugh. Like
the snarkiness of it, yes.
Yes.
Sucks to be you. Sucks to be you.
Yes, but people find that they falsely get validation for what they're going through, and people chase validation through so many things. I was one of them. Like I wanted everybody to like me and wanted everybody to be around me. And the thing is, when you're suffering and you're pushing this out in the world and you're like, oh gosh, looking at old Facebook posts, oh gosh, I cringe at myself. I complained about everything because I was chasing people caring about me in the comments, making comments like, oh, I'm so sorry you're doing, oh my gosh. And I craved that because it felt like caring, except it wasn't.
We all have that Facebook friend who posts prayer requests or just their thoughts, and you could tell they feed off of the oh poor you, and a lot of people at first, if you do that a little bit, you get. I get that sometimes even in my own work when I post something and I'm very vulnerable and sharing, and I'm like, okay, but thank you, but I don't need that. Like I share for more than just the accolades or the awes of the world. I share to help other people with their own suffering, what they're kind of dealing with. And so, but there are people who will take advantage of that. And I think after a while, Brittany, a lot of people catch on to that and they stop following that. You don't want to follow a Debbie Downer on Facebook all day. How horrible is that if all you ever see from I wish I could have this, and then people offer to give money. It's a scam after a while.
Yeah. Yes, people come to mind and I wish them well in their life. I really do. And it's sad looking in on the pattern, being in the work that I am. A lot of people don't like to be around me because I will very quickly point it out of, you're causing this. Like, I love you and I understand the initial, it's painful, it hurts, but you're causing more suffering by trying to avoid sitting with the initial core feeling. Sit with that. Feel it, process it, and then move on about your life.
There it is. I think a lot of the suffering we have is born out of something truly horrible happening.
Yeah.
Little, big, medium, you pick the size, but something happened. But then the person says, okay, because this happened, then this happened, then this happened. And they make this chain of events happen. Whereas if they go back to that original thing that was supposedly bad, and sometimes it's truly bad, and reframed it at that point in their minds and said, okay, yes, this happened, but I'm going to react this way, then all that little domino effect of things that would follow, the suffering domino would go away. But what happens is people take one incident, big, medium, or small, and then they make it this monumental thing that's just constantly with them throughout their life, and it becomes a life of suffering rather than a moment of suffering. And that's what we're talking about here today. Stop living in the suffering. Yeah. It's your fault. It's your fault at that point if you don't stop it. And no matter where you are in your life right now, if you've got something that you're suffering with, stop, analyze it, take a look at it. What was the genesis of it? Really feel how you really feel about it. All of these things. And what's the name of that book Brene Brown just wrote? Atlas of the Heart?
Mm-hmm.
Atlas of the Heart. So, and it goes through a lot of these kind of emotions. You can read through that, find out what emotions you're actually feeling, because sometimes suffering, like anger, isn't actually suffering. Sometimes suffering is masking whatever the real emotion is. Get that out in the open, work through it. That's what we do on One Step Deeper, guys. That's why we're here.
A lot of people ask me, Jimmy, how do you get such good deep sleep? Well, there's a lot of things that I do, but one of the newest things that I recently added is this upgraded magnesium from a company called Upgraded Formulas. Go to their website, upgradedformulas.com, and you can learn all about this nano technology that they use for this particular mineral of magnesium. Again, it's called Upgraded Magnesium, and it's got all the different forms of magnesium in it using the nanotechnology, so it gets absorbed a lot better. Guys, I have seen my deep sleep improve by as much as 30 to 40% simply by adding in this product along with sunshine exposure, darkness in the room, cooler temperature, all of the things that I always have done. So again, upgradedformulas.com is the website. Go check them out.
Yes, absolutely. You know, I want to roast myself so everybody else can learn from my mistakes. And so the biggest story that I have several stories that I've caused my own suffering, but one of the biggest ones that I'm honestly just now coming out of is the suffering that I prolonged after what happened to me in the hospital. Yes. So this is the difference. So you can see clean pain, dirty pain. The clean pain was I went through something horrific, traumatic that I didn't cause. It was a complete accident, freak accident. I had to go in the hospital. I had to endure all of those things. It was painful. It sucked. It was horrible. And there was a lot of grief about losing the best version of myself. So right before the incident itself that happened, I was the best version of me. I was doing personal development. I was working. I was eating healthy. I was doing all of the things that
You had me as a friend at that point.
Yes. So I felt like the best version of myself, and then it just got swept away. It felt like my entire identity and self and everything got swept away. And that's when I learned I was planting my identity in the wrong things. Instead of having myself as my identity, my thoughts, my ideals, what I did, how I acted, that was my identity. And so I had this crash afterwards because I couldn't eat the same way. I couldn't move my body the way I used to because I'm shifting it here. And I felt like I was stuck on the couch. And I told myself, if I do this, then I'll be in pain. Was there some truth there? Yes, but the dirty pain that came in was I convinced myself that because I couldn't run, I couldn't walk, and I would stay on the couch. for hours every single day. I would get the smallest twinge of pain. And listen, pain is tough to deal with when you deal with it every single day. Chronic pain is miserable, guys. When you wake up and you know as soon as you open your eyes, you're going to be in pain and you got to